In April, Velveteen Dream was accused of sending indecent images of himself to a minor.
11 months later, and WWE have announced that they released the Velveteen Dream.
Velveteen Dream was arrested not once but twice this month.
Cocaine is a hell of a drug, EC3.
Velveteen Dream is one of the most controversial figures in wrestling. Once upon a time, he was pegged to be the future poster boy of WWE and wrestling's next megastar, with many cosigns from the likes of John Cena, Kevin Owens, Triple H, and more. It seemed for all the world that the Velveteen Dream was destined for the stars, but none of these lofty expectations came true, or will ever come true, as now he is one of the most hated and detested wrestlers of the 21st century. How did a man who was the next big thing and was destined for greatness fall so short of the mark that many people put upon him and became such a shadow of his former self? Is this the case of Velveteen's sexually charged gimmicks spilling over into real life, causing him to take out his perversions on teen boys? Or is this people judging Velveteen too harshly and one big misunderstanding filled with fabrications, lies, and injustices that have robbed an innocent man of his lifelong dream? How did Velveteen's dream become his scariest, never-ending nightmare? Velveteen Dream was born as Patrick Clark Jr. in Washington, D.C. in 1995. When he was just 2 years old, his father was murdered.
So when I was 2 years old, my father was killed. He was stabbed. He dabbled in the thug life, if you will.
Little Patrick's mom eventually remarried, and until Patrick was 8 years old, he grew up thinking his stepfather was his real father. But when he found out the truth, he was completely crushed. Amidst all of these complicated feelings, little Patrick found wrestling to cope with everything. Professional wrestling gave him solace and helped him to overcome his daily struggles.
I really started falling in love with professional wrestling. I looked at that to save me, to keep me out of the bad and the negative that was surrounding me.
Clearly, the often described as shy young Patrick had a deep-seated passion for professional wrestling. So it was no surprise that as a teenager, he decided to start training to become a professional wrestler. In 2014, he made his professional wrestling debut and went on to form a tag team with Leo Rush. He wrestled on the independents briefly, but he got his big break when he was selected to be a contestant for the 6th season of WWE reality TV program Tough Enough, which is a competition series wherein participants undergo professional wrestling training and compete for a WWE contract. WWE has a recruitment strategy that seeks out athletes in other sports and molds them into wrestlers. Patrick had an advantage over everyone else because he was the only one that season that was a genuine wrestling fan. Patrick wowed people at home and the wrestling judges with his natural charisma and alluring aura. On Tough Enough is where we saw the first inklings of the Velveteen Dream, as Patrick's infectious flamboyance was on show from week to week. He was a favorite to win the competition, but unfortunately in the 5th episode, he was eliminated due to a perceived lack of humility, cockiness, and bad attitude. However, Patrick made such a great impression on Tough Enough that the decision to take him off the show was met with some backlash from WWE wrestlers, with the likes of Mick Foley, Chris Jericho, and The Big Show singing praises for Patrick. Veterans saw something special in him, and because of this, he was offered a WWE developmental contract, of which he accepted. In NXT, he went under his real name, Patrick Clark, and he developed his character as well as his wrestling further. Patrick's first distinct character in WWE was the gimmick of a Donald Trump supporter wearing shirts with Donald Trump's image and the Make America Great Again slogan. While this was a controversial gimmick, it was very bold of him, which is indicative of his willingness to take risks and think outside the box in order to make a character distinct. However, in 2016, something unexpected happened that would have a massive influence over Patrick's WWE career. Musical icon Prince passed away. Prince was known for his flamboyant style and showmanship and was regarded as a sex symbol for his androgynous, amorphous sexuality and gender play. Prior to Prince's death, Patrick had not known much about him, but after he passed, he became enamored with him and dove deep into who Prince was. Patrick wasn't getting much TV time in NXT and often went on long absences from NXT to train in the Performance Center, but with his limited appearances, he slowly started incorporating Prince into his character, often calling himself Unusual Patrick Clark and referencing the Patrick Clark experience. However, this version of Patrick Clark was not an immediate hit, as people were critical of the blatant ripoff of the legendary Prince, who had passed away not too long ago, and some believed that he would never get over with this effeminate gimmick. But then in May of 2017, the Velveteen Dream was born, and this was one of the greatest and most compelling characters in the history of WWE. The Velveteen Dream character was part Prince, part Goldust, part Rick Rude. It was reminiscent of people and mannerisms that we've all seen before in wrestling and pop culture, but it felt original coming from the Velveteen Dream. He was mysterious, yet so enticing, and his character was provocative, androgynous, and overly sexualized in such a manner that was equal parts engaging, off-putting, and quite frankly, ludicrous. The Velveteen Dream showed a sexual ambiguity that many would take for pure homosexuality, and this left many people wondering whether he is straight, gay, or bisexual.
For all of you out there asking, yes, the Dream is bilingual.
This caught many people's attention, and it took a lot of fans outside of their comfort zone, which made him all the more intriguing and bigger as a name. He had a certain swagger and panache about him that was hard to put your finger on, but oh was it so intoxicating and alluring. He was an arrogant son of a gun that thought he was better than everyone else and carried himself as such. This all played into what he did best, which was subvert expectations and mold his character to be the most disrespectful to whomever he had taken issue with. Everything the Velveteen Dream said and did was colored with the supposition of disrespect. He went into most situations expecting to be overlooked, dismissed, and ultimately insulted. He was a diva and supplied the ammunition for such an attitude towards him willingly, and he almost gleefully started conflicts. He was purposefully infuriating and always made mountains out of molehills. Nothing felt out of character for the Velveteen Dream, and yet you were never quite sure what to expect from him. Expectations are the mother of disappointment, and by messing with our expectations so purposefully and continually subverting them, the Velveteen Dream found himself in a place where the fans were consistently pleasantly surprised by what we got from him. The Velveteen Dream was incredibly fluid while always staying tethered to the ultimate motivation of his character. The Velveteen Dream was everything that a character should be. He had a background, he had unique traits, he had goals, he had ways to react to a victory and a loss. He left you wanting to tune into NXT every Wednesday to see what he was going to do next. Most importantly, the Velveteen Dream made you feel something, whether it was hate or love, or a feeling that you couldn't really quite put your finger on. He was a master at making you care about a storyline. He could turn very little into a whole lot, which is testament to his immense storytelling abilities. An example of this is his very first ever big feud with Aleister Black, who was the NXT champion at the time. This feud started simply because the Velveteen Dream wanted Black to say his name. Dream stalked him for months trying to get him to say his name, and this made for some very compelling TV. The feud culminated at TakeOver War Games, and Aleister Black emerged victorious, but after the match, Black took the microphone and said this: "Enjoy infamy, Velveteen Dream." And just like that, the Velveteen Dream had won even though he had lost in the ring. Whether he won or he lost, he always got over in the end. Velveteen Dream was just a larger than life character that was the real deal and just had that it factor that you can't really explain. The Velveteen Dream is an experience everyone should bear witness to, and if you don't live it, you'll miss it. In the modern era where kayfabe is dead, Dream still played with kayfabe and kept it strongly intact at all times. The Velveteen Dream lived and breathed his character. The Velveteen Dream had everything in his arsenal to make him a superstar. He literally had everything. He had time on his side because at the peak of his career, he was in his early 20s. It's astonishing that he had almost everything figured out before he even turned 25. He had the prowess of a 20-year veteran even though he was only a few years into the wrestling business. Everything from his strut to his mannerisms screamed experience. But that wasn't the case. He was just a student of the game and a true prodigy. He also just had the right look, standing in at 6'2" and 227 pounds and jacked as hell. Just by default without adding anything extra, he had the look to succeed in WWE, considering the fact that Vince McMahon likes big meaty men slapping meat.
Big meaty man slapping meat.
Not only did he have a good stature, but his clothing and gear choices often put him a notch above the rest. He often wore eccentric and outlandish outfits, and this led to fans always being interested in what he had to wear. He has many iconic looks. He also had a tendency to put his opponents' faces on his gear, and he even went as far as to put Roderick Strong's wife and child on his gear one time. The Velveteen Dream also had incredible promo work. While constantly referring to himself in the third person, he made himself feel like a big deal. He was a natural on the mic and had a knack to cut intriguing yet captivating promos. He was not one to shy away from playing mind games with his opponents and was always messing with them in one way or another. He had a tendency to be sexually suggestive to his opponents and sometimes even flirt with them. In WWE, you need to have talent on the mic to truly succeed, and he had it definitely. He just understood sports entertainment. The Velveteen Dream also was very talented in the ring. He was very versatile in the ring, and his moveset varied from big brutal strikes to high flying moves. His height and weight was just right, so he could work with bigger guys as well as smaller guys and make it look believable. He was incredibly athletic and had a finishing move called the Purple Rainmaker, which was a diving elbow. Every time he had a match, you knew that you were in for a treat because his matches were always entertaining and told a great story. One thing that the Velveteen Dream also had was that fans and wrestlers alike absolutely adored him. Velveteen as a character was neither a face or a heel, but in NXT he was portrayed as a heel. Despite this, he was still cheered, and that is the hallmark of a great character. Fans had an extremely high opinion of him and saw him as the next big thing. Fans believed that once Velveteen made it to the main roster, he was going to be the face of the company inevitably. They compared him to generation-defining stars, and they believed that he could reach the heights of those stars and even surpass them. The fans believed that the Velveteen Dream had the potential and star power to even transcend wrestling and become Hollywood's next wrestler turned movie star. Not only did the Velveteen Dream get high praise from fans, but he also had a great relationship with the head booker of NXT, Triple H, who booked him to be the longest reigning NXT North American champion of all time, with his reign lasting 231 days. The Velveteen Dream also got praise from a lot of wrestlers too. Most notably wrestling legend John Cena, when asked about who he would face in NXT, had this to say about him. "I would face Velveteen Dream. I think that is the one. I got that odd mental and great feeling about Velveteen Dream." This was very significant because once upon a time, many people were calling on the Velveteen Dream to face John Cena at WrestleMania and retire him. That's how highly he was esteemed in the wrestling world. The Velveteen Dream was just a cut above the rest and was bound for the stars. But then in early 2020, amidst the pandemic and worldwide lockdown, his world came crashing down. Warning, from this point of the video, very heavy topics will be discussed, so if you're easily triggered, now's a good time to stop watching the video. In early 2020, the Speaking Out movement reared its head into the wrestling world. The Speaking Out movement was a social movement that was against emotional, physical, and sexual abuse in the professional wrestling industry, where people publicized their allegations of misconduct committed by prominent wrestlers. Amidst this movement, the Velveteen Dream's name was brought up, with the allegation that he sent a picture of his genitals to a male minor and was pressuring him to send a similar picture back. This was a really bad look for the Velveteen Dream, so he claimed that he was hacked and someone had stolen his picture, and the messages that were on the screen was not him. While his defense was certainly possible, it was shrouded by doubt because as time went on, more and more underage males came forward accusing the Velveteen Dream of sexual grooming. Most notably Josh Fuller, who was an independent wrestler that Velveteen met when he was 19 and Fuller was 16. They chatted for a while and became close, with the Velveteen Dream even tweeting about Josh Fuller one time. Josh Fuller released many screenshots of his and Velveteen's conversations. While most of these conversations were pretty innocent and it looked like Velveteen was trying to help out a young aspiring wrestler, there were moments within the conversation that were very questionable, with the Velveteen Dream pressuring Fuller to show him his physique under the guise of judging him to see if he would make it in WWE. In Josh Fuller's statement against Velveteen, he repeatedly said that Velveteen didn't make any sexual advances on him and that he was never directly sexual to him. Josh Fuller said all of this but still called Velveteen Dream a sexual predator, and this was a reference to the other victims that had come forward accusing Velveteen Dream of sexual grooming. This brings us to the second accuser in the case of Velveteen Dream, who goes by the name of Jacob Schmidt. Jacob Schmidt was 16 years old when he started talking to Velveteen Dream and was an aspiring wrestler who Velveteen was helping to become a wrestler. Velveteen did the same thing that he did with Josh Fuller by pressuring Jacob to send him shirtless pictures to judge his physique, and he asked Jacob, a 16-year-old, if he was packing. For those who don't know, Velveteen was basically asking if Jacob has a big member in between his legs. Jacob Schmidt revealed all of these disturbing conversations between him and Dream by taking a screen recording. But when he released this recording, his Instagram DMs revealed one of the groups that he was part of was called Exposing N-Word, which is most likely a reference to the Velveteen Dream. After Jacob saw his mistake, he deleted the video and his Twitter account, causing people to question the legitimacy of his claims, seeing that he was part of an anti-black group. Even though Jacob's claims were viewed through a skeptical lens, other conversations leaked that saw Dream asking another 17-year-old if he's packing, and he told the minor that he would be better off in porn. Another conversation leaked where he asked to see a male minor's private parts and told him to man up and just do it. Another conversation leaked where Velveteen Dream told the minor that f***ing is the best cardio. Really, Velveteen? Really? With all of these allegations coming forward, fans inevitably cancelled Velveteen Dream. Amidst this cancellation, the Velveteen Dream disappeared off WWE, but it was not for the reason that everyone thought. He was actually involved in a pretty serious car accident that hurt his back pretty seriously, to the point where his grandma even claimed that he was temporarily immobile. But eventually, Velveteen made his return to NXT to massive backlash on the internet. The outrage at Velveteen Dream returning to NXT was so much so that the hashtag #FireVelveteenDream was created, and it trended on Twitter every single time he appeared on TV. The fans questioned why he was still on TV despite being revealed as a nonce. WWE actually did an internal investigation on all of the accusations, and Triple H said that they didn't find anything incriminating with regards to the Velveteen Dream situation. He was cleared by WWE on the basis of a technicality. According to Florida law, the statutory R-word and grooming of minors by majors is forbidden, but there's an exemption when there is close proximity in age. This means that if the person being groomed is 16 or 17 and the groomer is under 23, then this is not illegal. So in the case of the Velveteen Dream, the main accusers, Josh Fuller and Jacob Schmidt, were 16 and 17 years old at the time when they were talking to Velveteen, who was under 23 at the time. So technically, the Velveteen Dream didn't do anything illegal, but he did do things that were morally wrong that warranted his cancellation. Even though he was cleared by all of the charges by WWE, it was a little too late for him, and the damage had already been done, as the more he appeared on TV, the bigger the hashtag #FireVelveteenDream got. WWE also did not want Velveteen to address all of the accusations, even though he wanted to address them, and this just made the situation much worse. WWE even considered giving him a mask and not having him speak to quell the heat that was on him, but they ultimately opted against this, and they took Velveteen Dream off of TV for a while. When it came time for a return, the Velveteen Dream being promoted to the main roster was in the works to cool the heat that was on him, but he also found problems on the main roster when he was backstage for Monday Night Raw. He explained what happened. "I was called up to Monday Night Raw, but again, I am shy. They want you to shake everyone's hand. I don't play by those rules, especially during COVID. I'm not shaking everyone's hand. I am not getting up in everyone's face. You're not wearing a mask in the locker room. I'm sure I pissed someone off." In the wrestling world, there's an old adage that new wrestlers in the locker room shake everyone's hand, and by Velveteen Dream not doing that, it was perceived as disrespect. Velveteen Dream had always notoriously been difficult to work with and had bad attitude problems, so this just inflamed that reputation that he had. Just a week after he was backstage at Monday Night Raw, he was released from his WWE contract, much to the fans' joy. The reason for his release was cited as backstage issues, but in reality, it was because he was proving more of a liability than an asset. In reality, WWE found itself at a loss amidst cancel culture. Money talks, and WWE has shareholders. Even though Velveteen technically didn't do anything illegal, he was affecting the bottom line and wasn't making WWE the money that he once did. It was just business at the end of the day, and Velveteen had to go. He released a statement after he got released. In this long statement, the Velveteen Dream explained that the allegations made against him by Josh Fuller and Jacob Schmidt derailed his career and ultimately led to his release from WWE. He maintained that he was indeed only trying to help these two aspiring wrestlers, like he had done with many other aspiring wrestlers, and that their conversations had been taken out of context and manipulated in such a way to make him look like a predator. He also explained that a lot of the other leaked messages were fabricated through Photoshop. But again, it was just a little too late, and it's very hard to come back from being cancelled. Since Velveteen was a little boy, it had always been his dream to be a WWE superstar, and he achieved that dream, but now his dream was no more, and that weighed heavy on him. So much so that a few months after his release from WWE, he got into legal trouble. What happened was that Velveteen was stopped by a police officer because he had no headlights on his car, but at this moment in time, he had cocaine on his person. So while the cop was walking over to his car, he sniffed up all the coke so that the cop wouldn't find it. But the cops saw all of this go down, and Velveteen Dream was arrested for coke possession and destroying evidence. This incident was unknown to fans when it happened. After he was released from being held in prison, he occasionally posted on Instagram with updates on his life and screaming his innocence, and he went on about how he'd like to return to WWE. In 2022, Vince McMahon stepped down from being the boss at WWE, and Triple H took over the reins, and he completely changed main roster WWE by giving SmackDown and Raw a strong NXT presence. The Velveteen Dream was one of Triple H's favorites, so bearing this in mind, Velveteen started campaigning for a return back to WWE with the hashtag #BringVelveteenDreamBack. And some fans online were pushing hard for WWE to rehire him. However, all of this was short-lived as the Velveteen Dream was arrested again. This time he was arrested for battery and trespassing. What happened here is that a gym employee asked Velveteen to leave the gym in order for him to clean, but Velveteen refused and struck the gym employee, bit his chest, and threatened to kill him. On this arrest, WWE superstar and Hit Row's very own Ashante Adonis bailed him out. But then just 4 days later, he was arrested again for possession of drug paraphernalia. Soon after all of this, former WWE wrestler EC3 accused Velveteen Dream of trying to film WWE superstars' penises without their consent. Velveteen Dream then went on Instagram Live and responded to these claims by saying what EC3 said was false. What was very interesting here is that the Velveteen Dream hinted heavily that they were doing cocaine that night in 2017.
What were we doing that night, Mike? What type of powder was on the table, Mike?
This indicates that Velveteen has potentially been struggling with drug abuse for longer than we actually thought. These days, Velveteen is in the news all the time. It's sad to see what has become of him now. From one of the brightest talents of his generation to a man slipping further and further away from grace. I don't feel sorry for him in the sense that you reap what you sow, and those are just the consequences in this day and age for doing what he did. However, I do feel sorry for him in the sense that he's quickly going down a self-destructive path. Quite honestly, he's just a man that needs help. He might have needed help all along, but one thing's for sure, he needs help now more than ever. Thank you for watching the video, please like, comment and subscribe. But anyway, goodbye you jobbers.